You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Yeah, I'm feeling you, sister. I was buried under a hospital all last week, which is why I was not on the air Tuesday. Hated not being here, though, and I'm glad, thank God, I'm glad to be back this week. Tell me about your week. What can we do for you?
Let's see. Last time, okay, my week was fine most of last week.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like towards the weekend, and yesterday was just like brutal hell. I was in pain yesterday, and I'm in pain today, you know, woman things. And it's like, yesterday was like the day for people to annoy me. I don't know why. It was just like, you know, I had this is how bad it was. It started off, I had a bad dream, okay? And the dream was so bad that I actually woke up screaming, okay? So after that, I'm upset because I'm like, oh my God, that was so creepy. In pain. Then somebody started arguing with me yesterday for no reason, and it just upset me, and I actually started crying. And then I get on Facebook, and I'm getting random messages from people that I'm like...
All right, that was me. Sorry.
No, not you. There's messages from people I'm like, why do you bother?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, just leave me alone.
Just all in all, kind of a tough week, huh?
Yes, I'm like so ready to punch somebody in the face. Like, you have no idea.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up because somebody else had a bad week this week for getting punched in the face, not once, but twice. And that is Mr. Cram Down Our Throats himself, John Cena. Did you happen to see the pay-per-view on Sunday night?
Yes, I did. And let me tell you, my ADD that I don't have kicked in within like the second hour.
You have developed ADD thanks to WWE. That's awesome. I got to tell you, I'll confess, I did not watch the pay-per-view. I was out of town for work this week, or this weekend rather, and I didn't get back in time to watch the pay-per-view. I did, however, read the recap, the fine recap that was posted to AngryMarks.com, and from what I could read, and sure enough, when I watched Raw last night, it sort of confirmed everything I'd read about the pay-per-view. It was pretty much the way it was described in that fantastic recap that we did. I'm not getting something here, and I need somebody to help me out. In fact, there's a couple of things that I don't get about all of this, okay? Let me just go ahead and tell you how it went down. So John Cena's wrestling John Laurinaitis, and basically the stipulation is if John Laurinaitis loses the match, he's fired. This is per the board of directors from last week. If any superstar gets involved in the match, they are fired, and I think, therefore, because he loses by disqualification, John Laurinaitis would therefore then be fired as well. So basically, this is if the bad guys cheated, all they get fired, and leave it up to John Laurinaitis to find a way around this. For weeks now, he has been humiliating, he has been emasculating, he has been just absolutely decimating the Big Show.
Yeah.
You know, it started with a random bump into in the backstage a couple weeks ago. Hey, who do you think you are running into your boss like that? And then he had passed that decree that anybody who makes fun of his voice has dire consequences, right? So Big Show decided to do that. Eve heard it, turned him in. Then he had to do all this long series of humiliating apologies on TV that finally just flat-ass led to his being fired. And I think he was fired on SmackDown, right?
On Raw last week.
Okay, he was fired on Raw last week. I must have skipped over that part. So, lo and behold, we get to the main event of the pay-per-view, and John Cena is beating Laurinaitis' ass pillar to post. I mean, he is absolutely laying waste to him. You know, he dumped a trash can over him, sprayed him with a fire extinguisher, threw him down in the announce chair, and put a headset over him and made him try to imitate Booker T before he whipped his ass some more. It was kind of funny, actually. So John Cena's having the time of his life with this match, and there's no way he's going to lose the match. And when John Laurinaitis left the ring to try to run away, Big Show, the fired Big Show, who's not a WWE superstar, foreshadowing, drags his ass back out to the ring, throws him in there, and makes like he's going to give him a choke slam. Then he throws him to Cena, who, of course, picks him up for the FUAA, whatever you want to call it. And Big Show cold cocks Cena, knocks him out, and Laurinaitis gets the pin, and therefore the win, and keeps his job, right?
Yeah.
Did I pretty much get all that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, the one question I have about all of that is, why?
I don't know.
And that one word, why, covers nearly every aspect of this. Why would Big Show sell out to a guy that publicly humiliated him for weeks? Why would Big Show, and John Cena actually asked this question last night on Raw, why would Big Show punch out John Cena when all Cena had to do was win the match and Show could have gotten his job back from the next general manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did the bookers who put all this shit together for us to watch choose the Big Show to be the guy to pull this off? There are so many different aspects of this I don't understand, but they're all covered by that one word, why?
You know what? That's my main issue because, you know, like I was telling you Sunday night when you asked me was I watching the show, I've been puzzled by this whole situation of when they first started this with the Big Show and John Laurinaitis on TV, because I'm like, Big Show, they had made him a baby face. He was over with the crowd. He had the world title. I mean, he was so over that, like, he comes out there and people just erupt. And then it was just like, okay, you've got something going for this guy. And then the next week, he's on his knees begging for his job and crying. And now he's a heel. It just made me like, why of all people the Big Show? There's so many guys on the roster that could probably use that spot. Do we have to have Big Show for this? I don't know. Well,
and you and I a few weeks ago went over our list of guys that we were strongly suspecting were in line for a future endeavor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm looking at some of the heels that may or may not be fired that could probably use some kind of a rub, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at I'm going to leave Jack Swagger off the list because I'm convinced that he's not long for this company, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking at guys like Dolph Ziggler, who's really not doing much right now.
Yeah.
Except for running around with Swagger and losing every match they've been in together.
Hell, they could have put Swagger in that spot.
Right. But I really think he's probably on his way out the door. They're doing as little with him as they can get away with right now.
Yeah.
But Ziggler's still out there on TV. He's still got the cocky personality. The Michael Cole's still putting him over, which is oddly enough a sure sign that you're probably not getting fired. Okay, if the commentators are making a big deal of talking about you, they're not going to waste airtime talking about somebody they're about to get rid of. That's why when you see Swagger and Ziggler in a match together, it's almost always about Ziggler. You don't really hear a lot about Swagger. In fact, last night they did that 3-on-2 handicap match. It was Ziggler, Swagger, and Lord Prince Albert Tyneside, right? It was those three against Cena and Sheamus. And the whole match, Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler are putting over Lord Tensai, obviously, but mostly Ziggler. Ziggler, the former world heavyweight champion. Well, yeah, he was former world heavyweight champion for what, like 6 minutes once?
Yeah.
Like, I guess he technically is recognized as being a former world champion, even though he didn't even last a whole show with that title.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I'm not sure he lasted an hour with it. So, but Jack Swagger had like a 2 or 3 or 4 month title reign a while back, and they never mentioned him really being a former world heavyweight champion. They are not bothering to put him over at all, even when he's in a match, So
yeah.
I really think he's on the short list to get axed. You'll probably see his ass on TNA in the next 3 to 6 months.
Oh, God, don't even get me started on TNA.
But with Dolph Ziggler, I feel like he's still probably got a viable spot in the company, okay? So why not make him that guy? Or here's one better yet, and I threw this one at you earlier. Why not The Miz?
Yeah. I mean, he's been losing a lot. Wasn't he the one that got pinned or almost got pinned at Mania or something like that.
Who, Ziggler or The Miz?
Miz, for Team Johnny or something like that. I don't know. They could have set up something going far as that match or something, and they could have continued it. Like I said, he's been losing, and he's been losing to Brodus Clay and even Santino.
Yeah, he jobbed to Santino Marella on YouTube.
Santino, and maybe from what I've been hearing, it's supposed to be WWE is trying to do this whole humbling experience. You know how they always do. They put the guys at the top, then the next year they bring them down, see if they can handle it. Okay, maybe, but at the same time, come on now, like, that's all he's been going against now is like lower mid-card guys.
Yeah, they're giving him what I call the Chris Jericho treatment, and Jericho actually talks about this in his latest book. How he won the Undisputed World Heavyweight title, carried it for a while, and then next thing he knows, he's not even on some shows. Like, they weren't even booking him on shows.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening with Miz right now. It's almost a mirror effect, They gave Miz the title, let him run with it. He won the main event at WrestleMania last year. Okay, The Rock had to get involved for that to happen, but still. He won the main event at WrestleMania. He walked in with the belt, walked out with the belt. That's a pretty big deal in Vince's eyes, okay?
Yeah.
But now what Vince is doing with him is the same thing he did with Chris Jericho. Okay, you've had your run with the belt. Now we're going to completely humble and humiliate you for a while. And if you still prove to be a company guy and you prove that you have the backbone and the thick skin to handle that, then we'll know you've got the stuff that it takes to really make it in this business. That's kind of backwards thinking as far as I'm concerned, but that's been Vince's business model for time untold, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not even really going to make an issue of that, okay? That's just Vince being Vince. That's fine. But enough's enough.
Yeah, but you know what I think it is? Mainly is, when The Miz started to come up towards the main event, he was really the only heel that they had that stood out because of his cocky persona. He's awesome. He's better than everyone. It made him stand out from the pack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not even a year later, how many fucking guys do you have on that roster that has that same persona now?
Yeah, and I said that, several years ago, and by several, I mean 2008. Because remember when Jericho came back in late 2007 and we hadn't seen him in 2.5 years? He came back in late 2007, and he came back as a face. He was Y2J, and he went after Randy Orton, who was a heel at the time and wanted to win the title, And he did his typical Y2J shtick for a while. But then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he became this cocky, smarmy, suit-wearing, slicked-back hair, talk real slow and deep and condescending to you because you're stupid masses. He became that heel, okay? And while he certainly wasn't the first person ever to do that, it was still not overdone at that time. But now, he's doing that. You've got, The Miz was doing that. Dolph Ziggler's out wearing suits once in a while now. You see Jack Swagger in suits all the time. And it's like this has just become a whole thing now. And it's like the go-to move when we turn somebody heel. Yeah,
and you got Alberto Del Rio doing it. You got you got so many freaking guys doing it. That's what I think the main problem is a year ago you can pick the Miz out. Like, you had Chris Jericho there at one point, then he left. But out of the heels, you will know what type of character he is. Now you've got all these guys with that same persona or something. You can look at them and compare them to the Miz, and it's like it's bad because there's too many fucking heels. It's way too many heels. Not everybody can be a heel, and it's just it's no variety.
And that's another problem with doing this with the Big Show, and you were the one that actually pointed this out to me, and that is that there are so many heels in the company, and there was no better illustration of that. And again, this was you pointing it out. there was no better illustration of that than last night when they decided to not only make this a 3-on-2 handicap match, but it also became a lumberjack match. And every lumberjack out there was a heel. Every last one of them. You had Epico and Primo. You had Jericho came out there. I don't even remember if The Miz was on TV last night. Was he? I don't remember even seeing him last night.
I don't even know. Was he?
You had all these heels surrounding the ring, and then when the shit hit the fan and it turned into this big Donnybrook brawl, all the heels got in the ring and started beating the shit out of Sheamus and John Cena. And the next thing you know, here comes all the good guys to help clear it out. All 4 of them.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because, I had said it, during the show here in Angry Marks chat room. I had said it when they first started the lumberjack match, and I was looking around the ring, and I'm like, where is the faces? And then when the brawl broke out, I'm like, hold on. You mean to tell me in your entire company you only have 4 baby faces?
Right.
I know Rey Mysterio's injured and Sin Cara is somewhere, but I'm thinking to myself, I know there is more baby faces, even to lower mid-card guys, like fucking Yoshitatsu or Ezekiel Jackson and all. Come on.
Where was Zack Ryder last night? Zack Ryder wasn't even on TV last night. In fact,
none of them were there.
He's like, Kurt Hawkins got spot on TV last night, and I didn't.
But it just made me when that whole spot happened and when the baby faces came out there, I was thinking to myself, okay, even if the lower mid-card guys that we don't really see or don't know that they still have a job run out there together, it still makes it okay, we're all staying together against the bad guys. No, what happens? 4 of them run out, and I'm like, it's 4 of you and 20 of them.
Right.
You got Lord Tensai and all of them at the ring. What?
And, I want to get back to the big show here in just a second, but I do have to make one more comment about that brawl at the end, okay? The faces all come running out to clear the ring of the heels, okay? And poor Khali. Everybody's down the rant, and here he is just sort of shuffling along. It's he got in the ring 10 minutes after that brawl started.
Yeah, and everybody's
can we please just put this guy out of our misery at this point? He can't wrestle, okay?
He's when there's a bar fight, he is the worst one to take with you.
He really is. And
he's the one you tell to go to the car. Just go to the car. If you're going
to take him with you, give him a 10-minute head start. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's gotten beyond, it's sad now, It's kind of like watching your dad get too old to play softball, but he still doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah.
Dude, walk away while you can still walk, and barely at that. It's just gotten so sad.
And the funniest thing was, when he was getting in the ring, like you said, it was 10 minutes later and the brawl was almost over. CM Punk's fighting with somebody, and Punk just turns and looks at him
yeah.
Now you're here?
I'm the best in the world, and you're not even on my planet, dude.
What is going on?
It was seriously, and I mean this, okay? My heart really hurts for the guy.
I feel bad for him too, but
I just don't know what they're still trying to get out of him. I really don't.
You know what? I never really understood what they were really trying to get out of him on purpose. Okay, he's big, he's intimidating, but when he came in for that first run with when he was going against The Undertaker and Batista, okay, it was fine then. And then it just is why is he here?
Yeah.
They really don't use him. And when they do, it's a really bad match. A couple weeks ago on SmackDown, Cody Rhodes, he's good in the ring. He's not the best or anything, but he made Cody Rhodes look horrible in the ring. And I was just just take this guy and just put him somewhere, give him a segment or something, because him being in the ring, no.
Yeah, and it just, I know Kev would say, if he were on air right now, Kev would say, well, they're trying to appeal to the crowd in India, and well, are they really? I mean, first of all, he's not even necessary. I know Jinder Mahal's not a great wrestler, but at least he can walk, okay?
Yeah.
So if you're serious about pushing somebody from India who could really bring along the Indian crowd, that would be the one I would be pushing, just for sheer ability to walk. I mean, Khali can't even walk anymore. It just it's gone downhill really fast, because when he first came in the company 6, 7, 8 years ago, whenever that was, I mean, he wasn't he obviously didn't have much of a work rate and all that, but he was at least more ambulatory back then. Now it's more like he needs an ambulance. I really think Big Johnny ought to give up his hovercraft and let or his hovercraft.
Oh my God! I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, but back to the Big Show right quick. It's just they chose to turn him heel because what the company really needed was just one more heel. Okay, I mean, let's ignore all the ones we already have and let's just make a brand new one out of the Big Show. Now, I get from a functional standpoint, Big Show can knock people out with one punch. They've carefully cultivated that whole thing over the last few years now, okay?
Yeah.
That's fine. But the couple of problems I have with using him and the way they're using him right now is, first of all, why not use somebody who's already a heel instead of making one out of him? And then secondly, the promo he cut, you asked me off air earlier what I thought of the promo that he cut last night on Raw. That looked a lot like the same promo we got from Shawn Michaels 3 or 4 years ago when JBL turned him into his love slave. So we've seen this whole thing where a guy has to get his hands dirty and be the bad guy against his own better judgment, against his own human nature, because, hey, he's got to provide for his family. Yeah,
but the thing is, like, when I was watching that promo last night, and I was thinking, I was still thinking, why the Big Show? He's over with the kids and everything. You just turn him, and he is just going on and on like he's about to have a freaking nervous breakdown. And I'm like, okay, is it me or, okay, I know WWE is in love with having the evil boss and everything, but hasn't it been redundant so many times that we always have the good guy, the guy everybody loves, turns on the fans, decide with the bad guy because he can lose his job? We have done this so many fucking times.
Well, and except for the part about him losing his job if he doesn't do it, we saw Hulk Hogan do it in '96.
Yeah.
We saw... I mean, The Rock's had various heel turns. Stone Cold's had heel turns. Shawn Michaels has had heel turns. I mean, we've seen this so many times. Okay, Chris Jericho, we mentioned previously. I get that sometimes a heel turn is necessary. You want to freshen up a character and you want to do something new with him. That's fine. First of all, we need a few face turns now because we've got too many heels, like we just said a minute ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we need a few people to go the other direction to sort of balance out the whole thing. But this sniveling, whining, crying... I remember Chris Jericho getting fired by Eric Bischoff in 2005 and crying and snotting all over his shoes, begging to keep his job.
Yeah.
Then I remember Eric Bischoff getting thrown into the back of a dump or a trash truck by John Cena and getting hauled out. We've seen the sniveling, crying, oh my God, now I'm a bad guy, so I'm in the good graces of the evil boss. Yeah, you're right. We've seen it too many times. First of all, I'm sick of the evil boss, and so Cena. And I love the sort of shootish feel that he had to his promo last night. When he said we had an opportunity, a prime opportunity to get rid of John Laurinaitis. He said that's why I don't understand what Big Show did. We had an opportunity to get rid of Laurinaitis, and somebody else could come in and be the general manager. Vicky Guerrero, and he named a few names, Teddy Long. And then he said, hell, bring back the computer. Whatever. That's John Cena going, I'm getting so damn tired of this revolving door of general managers and the evil shit. Enough already.
Yeah, but they, like I've been saying for the past couple of weeks, they really defeated the purpose of having a general manager when they did that whole freaking storyline of Triple H is in charge of everything.
Right.
You know, they basically told us that, yeah, we have this guy standing here putting out charges, but if Triple H doesn't agree, it's not going to go well. And, you know, we didn't have that before. Yeah, we all knew Vince was in charge, but, you know, for a while we didn't see Vince on TV, and we knew Eric Bischoff was running shit or Stephanie was running shit. The only time you would see Vince is if he came in and said, "You're bad for business, you're fired."
Yeah.
And then just to have Triple H pop up whenever he feels like it and be like, "No, I'm calling the shots." And it's like, who's really in charge?
Like, who's fucking this dog, you know?
Somebody.
I mean, and the thing is in reality, company-wise, forget the storylines, forget TV for a minute. Vince McMahon's still running shit backstage.
Yeah.
All right, he's still running the show right now. Is he grooming Triple H to take over eventually? Absolutely. But right now, I'm not liking what I see, because you're absolutely right. It's like from week to week, Laurinaitis is the general manager of both shows, but then like 2 weeks ago, Triple H came out and tried to pull a rank on him before Brock Lesnar, quote, broke his arm. Okay.
Yeah.
Now Triple H has disappeared because apparently you can't run a company with a broken arm, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, or something. I don't know. I'm not getting this whole thing. And here's my thing about John Laurinaitis. You know, and I'm not getting back into this, but I will refer to it, okay? We've talked ad infinitum about John Cena being crammed down people's throats, right? Let me name 3 names of people that have been crammed down our throats in the last year that really, it's a disturbing pattern, and I'm just sick of it. The first was Michael Cole all last year. And he's still got some of the heelish tendencies, but the over-the-top heel last year where, you know, The Miz was literally Jesus Christ walking on water, and then, you know, he celebrated everybody bad and shit on everybody good, and that was the over-the-top ultra heel persona that Michael Cole brought to the broadcast booth last year.
Yeah.
Okay. The next name that really got on my nerves that was being crammed down our throats was Laptop. That character, whoever the anonymous Raw general manager was, that damn Laptop. And I will forever till my dying day celebrate Edge doing an elbow drop on that damn thing and then punting it across the arena. Loved it. And then the third name, obviously, is John Laurinaitis. I don't know what it is right now. I don't know how Vince sits backstage during these shows or sits in his office at Stamford, Connecticut, okay, at the Titan Tower, and scratches his head and goes, you know what we really need more of? We need more of an ultra heel character who's in charge of everything that nobody can stand. God, what we really need is we need another me.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, you know, I'm still confused of how they went with John Laurinaitis out of all the legends backstage, this guy. And, I mean, the bad thing is they still had Vicky Guerrero on TV with her, you know. And then they had Teddy Long, and Teddy Long's been there the longest as general manager. Mm-hmm. And they just sweep him to the side because they are so in love with having an evil character. And I'm like, we're in 2012. Do we even need one anymore? You know, that was so 2005. The last time it actually really worked for me was when, I'm going to have to say, when Eric Bischoff was in charge.
Absolutely.
Because he is such an asshole, and he's an asshole in real life, and he makes you believe it.
Yeah, and the only problem I ever had with Eric Bischoff in the wrestling business was booking.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, it was you know, he was always putting over Hogan, Nash, and Hall. I mean, that was just his whole MO when he was running WCW, and he literally destroyed the company that I grew up loving. Okay. He destroyed WCW with that whole booking mindset. And then I'm not even going to get into them bringing Russo on board, but I mean But as a character, I love Eric Bischoff. I love his character. Okay. The character that he plays on TV, that evil ass, you just want to stomp a mud hole in him. He did it so perfectly. All right. But you're right. That was years ago. Okay. And and you know what? If you want to have an evil GM running everything, and you just can't let go of that concept, fine. But like you said, there are plenty of people backstage they could have pulled out to do this. And I'll name 3 or 4 names right off the top of my head of people that stand backstage every week during Raw that not only would make a great evil boss, but can actually cut a fucking promo without getting it messed up. All right? And here are the names. Michael P.S. Hayes, easily.
Oh, my God, yes.
Arn Anderson, easily. I mean, these are guys that can rock a fucking microphone, okay? Hell, I'll even throw Sergeant Slaughter into that. I'll throw Dusty Rhodes into that. Okay?
I would throw DiBiase.
Yeah, $1 Million Man, of course, he's busy off preaching the gospel, and that's fine, okay?
Yeah.
How about Roddy Piper?
Yeah.
I mean, guys that can come out there, rock a microphone, be a badass, and really make this thing work. And not only that, but somebody that the crowds can identify with, somebody who's readily identifiable to crowds. It is sad that over the last 3 or 4 weeks, they have had to show footage. They've had to show pictures of John Laurinaitis wrestling in Japan to get the crowd to even understand why he has any kind of historical significance.
Yeah.
And
the crowd does not give a damn. Like, that's the thing that gets me of, you know, where some of us older fans, you know, we've heard of him, you know, through magazines or whatever. We know he was a wrestler. These younger kids, they don't know all these guys. That's why, you know, when you have certain legends come out there, they don't know who it is because, you know, all they ever seen is what they see on TV right now. So that's why it puzzles me of why would they go with a guy that is really that well known and is not going to get people excited. Why would you pick that guy?
The only thing I can hope for at this point is that they, and you know, to me, John Laurinaitis is like a cross between, I don't know, Vince Russo and Mike Adamle, okay? He's Vince Russo because the crowd just shits on him every time he walks out because he's just sucks, okay? But then he's Mike Adamle because he fucks up his promos. And I'm going to give you a great example of that. And I don't know if you even caught this from watching Raw last night.
Oh, my God, it was horrible.
They almost fucked up the whole Big Show punching out John Cena thing just from the promo that what's his name, Laurinaitis, you know, pulled off last night. What he actually said in his promo was that he rehired Big Show on Saturday. He said this in his promo. I rehired him on Saturday. Well, the problem with that dumbass is the board said last week that anybody who's a superstar that gets involved in the match is fired and you lose, and therefore you're fired. So if you rehired him on Saturday, then he was technically a superstar when he got in your match on Sunday. Michael Cole, of all people, had to go back and try to clean that up later by saying, no, what happened was they had a verbal agreement on Saturday, and he signed the contract on Monday after he pulled it off. So they had to, and they've even had to send out 3 or 4 tweets today to try to clean that fuck up that Laurinaitis pulled with that promo. Okay?
He is horrible.
I mean, he almost fucked up an entire storyline. It's not
pretty much.
I mean, this is worse than Jeff Harvey. Okay?
Yeah.
You didn't just fuck up somebody's name. You almost fucked up a major storyline here. Because that was going to create all kinds of problems if they didn't go back and clean that up. And Michael Cole had to clean it up, and then they had to send out 2 or 3 tweets today to try to get people to understand that Big Show was not, in fact, on the roster on Sunday when he punched out John Cena. So the fact that they had to spend all that energy cleaning up a bad promo by John Laurinaitis is just more evidence of why the fuck is he on my TV? Ever. Yeah, I'm sure he's great at negotiating contracts and being an executive vice president of talent relations backstage, okay? I don't want him on my TV screen ever. And it's not that whole thing where I love to hate the guy. I hate him because I hate him. This is more like what we call X-Pac heat, okay?
It's not even X-Pac heat. It's, you know, X-Pac still even got heat, got some type of reaction. When he comes out there, it's just like dead silence. You know, because, like I said, the fans, if you look at the WWE crowd or the WWE universe now, it's mainly kids now. And they're from ages maybe 3 to 10.
Right.
They don't know who the hell he is.
Yeah.
And it just
At least
puzzles me of why would you pick this guy and no one knows who he is?
And at least with a Roddy Piper or a Dusty Rhodes or an Arn Anderson, somebody who's backstage anyway, at least with somebody like that, the kid could go, hey, Daddy, who is that? And, oh, well, that's, that was Arn Anderson. He was one of the Four Horsemen. Or that's Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, former world champion. Or, that's Michael P.S. Hayes. He was one of the Freebirds. I mean, at least some of the crowd can explain to these kids who these people are, even if they are older and retired,
Yeah.
But Laurinaitis comes out there and kids are like, hey, Daddy, who's that? I have no idea. And that's why they had to go out of their way to show pictures of him wrestling in Japan the last few weeks, because nobody's connecting with it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why he's ever been important in wrestling. And let's face it, and I mean no disrespect to anybody who honed their craft in Japan, okay? Like Chris Jericho went to Japan and honed his craft. The Rock spent some time wrestling in Japan. I mean, so going to Japan to hone your craft is not a dishonorable thing at all. In fact, it's a very honorable and a very smart thing to do if you're serious about professional wrestling, okay? But somebody who's only ever been known for being in Japan, that's all they're known for, as an American wrestler, that's not good. Because that says I'm not putting asses in seats in the United States, so the entirety of my notoriety in wrestling was in Japan. That's not good.
Well, see, they're doing the same thing with Lord Tensai.
The best way I can bring this home is, because that's the case with John Laurinaitis, nobody really gets who he is. They don't know that his brother was a road warrior. You know? They're not connecting that. Hell, if anything, if they had to put Laurinaitis in as the general manager, they could have at least gotten the good Laurinaitis, the one people know.
Yeah.
Why this guy?
And, like you said with the Japan thing, they're doing the same thing with Lord Tensai.
Right.
And you see how that's going. No one gives a rat's ass about this guy because they're constantly putting over, oh, he left WWE to go to Japan. He had this long career in Japan. Okay, it's fine, Danny, to go to Japan and make extra money and, it's honorable. But with a lot of people in WWE, I don't think they realize this, but if you are not really a mark, or you don't go on the internet and check the news and find out where's this wrestler at and you're keeping up with their career, not a lot of people follow what's going on in Japan. Some people don't even know wrestling exists in Japan. So to keep harping on this every week, what the hell?
Now, I was in the middle of a really long and artistic rant when I think I got dumped, so I don't know how much of any of that you guys heard. It was classic Frank, though, I got to tell you. But basically, we were talking about any number of other legends that they could have, like true legends that they could have brought back from backstage. And did you hear me say the part about where parents could at least explain who some of those people are?
Yeah.
But there's no context for John Laurinaitis. And then the next thing I wanted to say about that is that if they had to make Laurinaitis the general manager, why didn't they pick his brother? Somebody people know. I mean, his brother was one of the Road Warriors. Why not get him to do it, It's like, why John Laurinaitis? Really? Geez. Oh.
That's the thing. I don't get it.
Yeah, and there's a lot I don't get right now. And incidentally, and we can make this the last topic for tonight because we got about 10 minutes left, or 15, 20 minutes left in the show. You and I exchanged some thoughts about sort of the whole direction of the company right now, and I'm talking across both brands here, okay? And I say brands like they're still brands anymore, but across Raw and SmackDown, I'm looking at what's going on, and I think you said it best when you said it's Degrassi bullshit.
Yes.
Because what we have now is you got to understand something. I grew up. I'm going to betray my age here, okay? I'm in my mid-30s. I'm 36 years old. And I have been watching wrestling since I'm 5, 6 years old. I remember Jim Ross being a clean-cut, somewhat skinnier man with a more, sort of a tenor speaking voice way back in the early 80s on Mid-South Wrestling, okay? And I remember what wrestling was like back then. There was a focus on the craft of wrestling. Yes, there were characters like Junkyard Dog, and you had, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Hacksaw Butch Reed, and you had Ric Flair would swing through the territories every once in a while because he was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and these were all territories of the NWA, okay, which eventually morphed into WCW. So you had characters back then, but the focus was on the craft of wrestling, and even on the craft of cheating in wrestling for the bad guys, okay? But the craft of wrestling was so important back then, and the backstage segments weren't like interaction between the wrestlers. It was mostly just interviews. Like, you would have two guys walk up and Jim Ross would be standing there with a microphone and he would interview them, and they would cut a promo and they would talk shit on whoever it was they were going to wrestle, and then we would all move on to the next match. And one of the reasons that they focused so much on the wrestling is because Mid-South Wrestling was 1 hour long. The show was 1 hour long every week. They didn't have time for a lot of bullshit, okay? A lot of story exposition and a lot of promos and a lot of, hey, here's what happened on Raw last week. And a lot of, hey, here's the SmackDown rewind. And hey, here's what you just saw 2 minutes ago before the commercial break. We're going to show it to you again. All the filler bullshit that we get now, okay? And I'm actually going somewhere with this, but nowadays there's no focus on the craft, really. And that's why it's so refreshing when somebody like CM Punk says, you know what, screw a superstar, I'm a professional wrestler. That's why people ache to see CM Punk and Daniel Bryan matches, even though we've seen that 1,000 times. We've seen that match a bunch of different times, and not even just in WWE. I think you said you saw it in ROH, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen CM Punk and Daniel Bryan wrestle over and over again, but it's still such good wrestling, and the guys have such good chemistry, and they're both so good at what they do that it's worth watching over and over again, even if there isn't a whole lot of story to it, okay? Because the focus in those matches is on the craft. Kind of like when CM Punk and Chris Jericho wrestled, and we kept saying, why do they keep doing all this? Your dad's a drunk and your sister's a drug addict. Why do we keep doing all that shit when these two guys should just get in the ring and fucking wrestle? Because that's what they do best.
Because like I said, last night when we were talking, everything is now like freaking, you said 90210. I said no. It's actually more like Melrose Place or Degrassi. They can never set up just a normal wrestling match. It has to have all of this drama in there, and none of it makes sense. Like, there is so many storylines that are going on right now that I am fucking confused about. I feel like I'm watching Degrassi. That's how confusing it is.
I mean, for a while there, Daniel Bryan was being emotionally abusive to AJ and treating her like shit and using her to shield him from opponents. And
now she's gone psycho. Yeah.
She's going after CM Punk, who apparently really digs psycho chicks. And you've got, what else do we have going on right now? Oh, the whole Teddy Long and Oksana thing. And I'm trying to remember what Claudio Castagnoli's name on WWE is right now.
Antonio Cesaro.
That's right, Antonio Cesaro. So you've got that whole love triangle shit going on, and then you've got the power-hungry John Laurinaitis, and you've got all this bullshit, and there is so much time spent on these things. It was one thing when you had the Vicky Guerrero and Edge thing, at least played it into the matches, okay? But there's just so much of this shit now that it's like we've lost the craft. And you actually said to me earlier, and I thought this was a fantastic point, and I meant it when I said I like how you think, okay? Mm-hmm. You said earlier that I don't need the bullshit, I just want to see the wrestling.
Yeah.
And
that's what I tuned into.
I'm getting sick and tired. It used to be the WB, and now I think it's the CW network. I'm just so tired of the bullshit, the drama. They've turned it into literally a soap opera. And I don't know what they're going for with this, but it just takes up so much time. To me, it's a bad thing when I see a match that has a clean finish and I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, it's, like I told you, when I first started watching wrestling, which was like, oh God, in the 90s, Right. And then around that time, this is like way before the Attitude Era. then it was still, you had your characters, but it was still focused on the ring action. And that's what drew me in of what's going on in the ring. Even when we got into the Attitude Era, and, there was a lot of stuff going on then that I don't like and did not agree, I don't agree with, and I still don't. But it was still, at the end of the day, you can spill coffee on a guy. It did not matter who he spilled it on. All you knew is that they were going to go out there and give you a hell of a match. Now, WWE takes 20 to 25 minutes at the beginning of Raw. Promo time.
Yeah.
Then we'll get maybe a 5-minute match. Then we go back to a backstage segment of more talking or somebody in the ring. And then we go back to another match, maybe 3 to 8 minutes or less. And then we get more talking and more talking. And it's like, what is this, Ricky Lake or Raw?
Yeah, and you know what you forgot there in the middle of all that shit is they do that 20 to 25 minute opening segment where somebody comes out, cuts a promo, gets interrupted, they talk back and forth, and John Laurinaitis comes out and he cuts his bullshit, and then some big, oh, by the way, you're in a match tonight with like 12 guys, so congratulations. You do this whole thing for like you said, literally the first 20 or so minutes of the show. Then we go off to a commercial, we come back, and what's the first thing they do right out of the commercial? They show that same fucking segment all over again in a video package. And it's like, okay, now we're 30 minutes into the show, and there's not been a single fucking match. Then they do, like you said, a 5-minute match, and then we go back to more bullshit. And to me, and again, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s where wrestling was wrestling, okay? Or at least up until about 96 when the Attitude Era started, and then WCW, the whole NWO thing. To me, the drama, the segments, the promos, the skits, the human interaction that we get should exist to accentuate the product. And the product is wrestling. You get in the ring and you settle your business, okay?
Yeah.
To me, all that other shit should lead into a match and should make the match more important, But what we have is the wrestling. It's flipped around to where the wrestling serves to accentuate all the fucking drama. And here's good news for you, by the way. You ready for this one? And I know you've already heard this, but I want to bring this out because I want to get your thoughts on it, okay? Here's more good news we got this week. Starting July, I think it's 26th, we're going to 3-hour Raws. So now we're going to get another fucking hour of more fluff and bullshit. Now we've got to get 3 hours of this every Monday night. And it's not going to give more stars, and I can hear people going, oh, well, an extra hour, that means that gives more people a chance to showcase and to shine. And it gives
what
more
crack are they smoking if they're thinking
that's
that?
exactly, no, it's not. There's not going to be there might be 1 or 2 more matches in that whole fucking hour, okay? But it's not going to give anybody else a chance to move up and show what they have. It's just more time for bullshit.
See, the thing is, like, the 3-hour shows we're going to get starting in July, it's going to be like how they've been giving us 3-hour shows. Boring, more talking, less matches. I'm just like, at this point, I don't know if I can endure 3 hours. Because it's just like, what the hell is going on? It's just like, they're not entertaining anymore.
Right.
Every time I watch Raw every week, like I was saying to you the other night, is it bad that, I'm an hour into Raw, it'd be like 10:03, and I can't even remember what happened in the last hour?
Yeah,
is it
bad.
that bad? Like that I can't remember anything where years ago you asked me 10 minutes later, how did the show open? I could tell you word for word what happened.
Right.
Now, I'd be like, I don't even know who had a match.
So now, in the 3rd hour, you're going to be trying to remember back to what happened in the 1st hour. And see, this creates a problem because WCW used to do 3-hour Nitros every Monday night. And personally, I think that was one of the problems. Now, WCW at least tried to maximize that first hour. That's where you get your really good cruiserweight matches, you know? And they toyed around for a while with doing that opening 20-minute segment where you come out and you set up some important, some important plot point for later in the show. The problem is people's attention spans can't support a 3-hour show every week. They just can't. It's one thing when you do it once in a while, like The Rock's birthday, or This Is Your Life, or you do a King of the Ring tournament, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. The problem is when you start doing this every fucking week, okay, you've got to do something at the beginning of the show to hook us for later in the show. Otherwise, people just won't watch the first hour, and then what's the point in really doing it? So something big has to happen in the first hour, and it's probably got to hint to something later in the show to keep people watching throughout the show, right?
Yeah, and another thing is, where most of the audience is kids, not many kids are going to sit down for 3 fucking hours.
No. And I'm on the East Coast, and so are you. How many kids are staying? How many 10-year-old kids are up at 11 o'clock at night watching wrestling anyway?
I wasn't allowed to be up past 10. When Raw used to be 3 hours, my mom would come in the room and be like, it's 9:30.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, I understand not everybody was raised the way I was, okay, but, when I was 10 years old, my bedtime was 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you're going to let your kids stay up until 11 on a school night watching wrestling anyway? And then you're asking kids to have a 3-hour attention span. And that's not likely to happen at home, okay? Because, and then really the problem comes in the second hour where you've got sort of this crater in the middle where you've set up all this good shit on the front end that's going to happen on the back end. What do you do with the middle of the show to keep people interested?
Yeah, and, thinking about the 3-hour shows, like you said, with Nitro, and I remember when Raw was 3 hours years ago. And I remember, the first hour be boring as hell. And then the only time the good stuff will happen is between 9 and 10 o'clock hour. After that, you can turn Raw off and go back to Nitro. Because you knew something was better going on in Nitro. And then, over the years that changed. But it's kind of one of those things of, okay, if you're giving me something worth seeing, I'm going to sit here and watch. But this stuff they've been doing in WWE lately, it's just like, it's driving me insane because it's like a fucking Lifetime movie. It's like everybody on that roster has some type of role in a movie, and it's never just this guy are feuding. No, It's this guy and this guy are feuding for no reason. This guy is feuding with this chick because he broke up with her, but they really weren't dating, and now she's gone crazy, and it doesn't make any sense because she's more focused on him instead of going after the Divas title, and then the Divas they're confused, and then it just does not make any sense at all. None of it is fluid, and their creative team needs to be fired because I remember years ago, everybody had their own thing going on in their storyline. This guy is feuding this guy, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, everybody's story fit in together.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had a reason being involved in somebody else's storyline because this is leading there. All of it came together and was fluid. Now, none of it makes sense.
Right, and I like what you said about this being like a Lifetime movie because at this point that's really, when Vince started making movies with his WWE studios and all this other bullshit, I don't know why he felt like spilling that over into the on-air product, let the craft be the craft. Let the wrestlers wrestle. And if you want to introduce a little comedy and and by the way, that's something that's really mostly missing anymore is comedy. I thought it was great last night that Santino came out there, gave Ricardo Rodriguez a Cobra, and then did the ring announcing himself. That was hilarious to me because he was completely mocking Alberto Del Rio the whole time. And that to me was funny. But that's the first time I remember laughing at anything that happened on Raw in weeks.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, you know, we need to have more variety. You remember what the days when you turn on Raw, even if you had a bad day, you would get your good match, and then you have your comedy skit, like, you would enjoy it.
Right.
Now, it's just like, I ask myself the same question every week when I turn on Raw. Why do I even fucking watch this anymore? Am I getting too old for this shit? Like, what? I ask myself that every week, and I never used to. I used to stay up when I'm not supposed to, watch Raw, and, you know, I watched every damn thing. And now I'm like, why do I even watch this?
Well, and you know what? You just brought up an awesome point. I like what you just said, because basically what we have now is even when WCW was good, you know, back when Goldberg was in his prime and NWO was still running shit, and even when Ric Flair took over as WCW president and was fucking with Eric Bischoff for weeks on end, okay? I mean, for a while there, back then, and then for a while in the middle part of this decade, and yeah, even some through the Attitude Era, and yeah, they went too far in a lot of ways, and in essence created a lot of the damage that we see now, this crowd expectation that's not being met. But there was a time in my life where I just could not wait. I spent all week thinking about, oh God, man, Nitro's coming on, or Raw's coming on. Or even when I was a kid, I couldn't wait till Saturday morning at 10 o'clock when Mid-South Wrestling was coming on. And then 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock that night when WWF was coming on. You know, there was a time in my life when I just couldn't wait for wrestling to come back on because I needed that, you know, and I know I sound like a wrestling dork, and I'm proud to be one, that's it, okay? But it was something that I just really looked forward to all fucking week. Now I'm just like, oh God, Raw's on tonight. I wonder what they're going to fuck up this time.
Yeah, it's bad to even...
Now I sort of
you
dread.
know, yeah, it's bad when you've been a wrestling fan pretty much your whole entire life, and you turn on wrestling and you're dreading even watching it, or you're upset watching it, and it's like, I just don't know what is going on up there. WWE is, what I think is wrong with them is they are so more concerned about being the trending thing on Twitter or having a story on TMZ. They are so more fucking concerned about that than the welfare of their company.
Well,
Like,
and you know, the Brock Lesnar John Cena match got a lot of criticism, mostly because Cena wound up going over in that match, but it got a lot of criticism for content. You know, it was too bloody, it was too gory, Brock Lesnar, you know, all this other shit. The reason I was okay with that, even though I really don't know that kids need to be seeing that much blood, the reason I was okay with it in that one instance is because that's the one instance that I've watched wrestling in the last, I don't know, probably a couple of years now. That was the one time that I watched a wrestling match in the last couple of years that I didn't feel like I needed to be curled up on the couch with a box of Kleenex and a cup of chamomile tea, okay? I mean, it just, God, enough with the emo. Seriously, and that was my major problem with Big Show's, bringing us back around full circle. That was most of my problem with Big Show's promo last night, is it was just so whiny and emo and just so tortured soul, and so, you know, you just got to understand where I'm coming from, and I've got a family to feed. No, really? What happened? And I'm going to ask this one last time before we wrap tonight. What happened to the craft?
it got, I just think it just got lost. For me, I think it got lost during the Attitude Era. And then when we got into the 2000s and stuff like that, and WWE was getting more popular, and WWE was on MTV, and, you know, you got freaking, you know, people in Hollywood interested in wrestling, and they never were before. I think they just got in over their heads and are more concerned about being on the National Enquirer than being in PWI Insider for something.
Yeah,
I think that's what happened.
And I do blame the internet for some of this. You know, I mean, if you crave storylines, that's fine. You can have storylines that lead into the craft. But the craft is being sacrificed for the sake of the storylines. And if they ever really want... And the bitch of it is, this WrestleMania sold more buys than any other pay-per-view ever for WWE. That's crazy. They sold out Sun Life Stadium in Miami or whatever it's called. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the problem is you and I are pure wrestling fans, and we're bitching about this, and it's not going to change because it's still making money.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing.
And in the end, Vince is in the business of business. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kind of in a way, and I want to point out the hypocrisy that you and I both have that's sort of the same as all the Cena haters out there, you know? We're arguing against something that clearly makes him money. So, as a pure wrestling fan, I want to see better wrestling, I want to see more wrestling, and I want to see more of a focus on the craft, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is, like, the bad thing is, wrestlers, they, you know, when fans come and tell them that, like, you know, I used to watch, but now I don't watch because it's too much of the drama, is no wrestling. And then some of them get offensive and they're like, well, you're just jaded. You know, you're just jaded by the internet. It's not, you know, yes, the internet has a part in it, but it's not really the internet, because I'm telling you right now, I know some people that are fans of wrestling or were fans of wrestling and never logged on the internet and checked none of the spoilers or nothing. Mm-hmm. And they just can't stand it now because of how the fuck it is now. Mm-hmm. It's changed dramatically. Like, yeah, I'm a fan of wrestling. I'm going to support it regardless, but I can't see myself any longer watching if it's going to be going this way. And then now everybody else is trying to do the same thing, and it's like, what happened to the craft? What happened to locking a headlock on a guy for 30 fucking minutes and everybody is sitting on their fucking hands wondering what's happening next? You know, what happened to Ric Flair setting up the figure four and everybody is standing on their feet? Yeah. Now the high spots are waiting for the punchlines or seeing what's going to happen next. And it's just like, come on. This is not a soap opera. It's wrestling. Yeah,
and that's what we want, and that's unfortunately not what we're going to get. I mean, that's why I mix in boxing and MMA, because there's none of that shit. You know, those are actual sports, and sometimes and I'm sorry, call me a dude, but sometimes I just want to see two people beat the shit out of each other, and that's why I didn't mind. That's why I didn't mind the John Cena Brock Lesnar match and how bloody it got, because that was two dudes just beating the shit out of each other. And it wasn't so much of a hardcore junk match. I mean, it kind of was, but it was just two dudes getting in there and beating the living shit out of each other. And that's kind of what I liked about the Triple H Undertaker match, even though, yeah, we'd seen that movie before. It was just two dudes wailing on each other, you know? And sometimes that's just what I need to see.
Yeah. You know, it's just like, I don't know if it's, maybe they just don't care anymore. Maybe they're just like, fuck wrestling. Yeah, this is what got us here, but it's not going to do anything for us. It's just like, come on.
Well, and as long as, like I said, as long as Vince keeps his stockholders happy and his pockets lined, you know, he can afford to phone it in at this point. One of the reasons that the Attitude Era got as bad as it did is because there was competition back then. They were trying to outdo a company that was pulling out all the stops on them.
Yeah.
And when and I don't remember exactly which one came first, the Stone Cold Steve Austin King of the Ring promo or the NWO thing, but when WCW pulled out all the stops, made Hulk Hogan a bad guy, and started bringing over WWF stars to augment their roster, like, you know, Hall and Nash and a few others, when WCW started doing that, Vince went, holy shit, my livelihood is now on the line. And that's when he just went balls to the wall, and we wound up getting some really over-the-top stuff, and we even mentioned some of this off the air. You know, Mae Young giving birth to a hand, the Katie Vick angle. I mean, just some really nasty, disgusting, gross shit. but people bought into it at the time.
Yeah.
You know? Well, now Vince has no competition. Sorry, Dixie Carter, you're no competition.
Dixie Carter, like, you know, she is just, she has no brain. Just no brain cells. You know, nothing against Dixie as a person or anything, but for her or anybody in TNA to think that they're competition for WWE, for them to even think they're competition for any fucking body, and to the smallest independents. Come on. The shit you guys are doing, come on now. Like, TNA is worse than WCW in 2001. They're losing guys left and right. You know, right now they got this video floating around on the internet that apparently Matt Morgan's about to debut in the WWE. And, you know, you just had Alex Shelley quit. And it's like, how can you be competition for anybody and you're losing your guys left and right? You can't keep any of your guys locked on contract, and your product is terrible.
Well,
even to the knockouts is getting bad.
And who do they have on their roster? They have Hulk Hogan. They have Ric Flair. They have Kurt Angle. You know, they have Jeff Jarrett. They have, and I'm looking at some of these guys, and I'm like, Scott Steiner, and I'm like, how are you going to win with that? These are all the guys that ran WCW, except for Kurt Angle. These are all the guys that ran WCW into the floor back in 2001.
Yeah.
They've already torched one company. Now they're torching another. And and you know, TNA, it just, the problem is that any company that tries to take on WWE now has got at least 12 hard years of work to even become the same kind of product. From a production standpoint, you know, they're not going to have the budget to do it. WCW really was the last great shot at taking down Vince McMahon. And it's gone. In fact, he owns it now. So it's gone. And WWE is what it is. Now, for those of you out there that just, you're digging our vibe about wanting to see the craft and you're not going to put up with Vince's bullshit, you can avail yourself of ROH all you want. Just don't ever expect it to become a world federation that's going to rival WWE. It's not going to happen.
And Ring of Honor lately, Jesus Christ, like, they're getting bad. I don't know what's going on. You know, and they're just, what's going on in Ring of Honor is, they've had, you know, Ring of Honor's had history of having long storylines, and which are good because some of the feuds are long and lengthy, and you need a long storyline, which I love. You know, storyline being built over 2 years, I love that. But there comes a time of when you have dragged this storyline out so fucking long that no one gives a damn. The people in the storyline don't care anymore. And, you know, this thing of they're still dragging out the Briscoes versus Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin. Why? Let it go. Move both teams onto something else. It's just like they're doing the same thing over and over. It's kind of like copy and paste. And the things that's going on with their iPay-per-views, it's just like, it's really disappointing me because a year ago, Ring of Honor had so many decent feuds, so much stuff going on, and everybody was talking about, now everybody is turning against them because we have been seeing the same fucking matches for almost the past 2 years. Yes, their roster is getting smaller because guys are being picked up left and right or leaving the company to go to Japan or going to WWE or TNA. But Ring of Honor now is like, I'm sorry, but I have to agree with Austin Aries. They are a shell of their former selves. Right.
They've become a minor league system. They've become a farm team for, you know, the bigger companies. And by bigger companies, I mean WWE, basically. And, yeah, TNA's probably picking up a few here and there. But, I mean, there's not going to be any competition for what we're looking at right now, you know?
No.
And then Vince is just going to have to I mean, I don't know. I guess I can't blame the guy for putting on whatever it is that sells. Personally, like I said, and we can wrap on this point, but personally, like I said, I miss the craft. Thank God that video libraries are still out there. The one thing that I will give Vince credit for is he is churning out DVDs by the bushel right now to remind us of why wrestling used to be great. Like they've got the Capital Clash DVD coming out.
Yeah.
That's good shit. I pop in my Four Horsemen DVD every once in a while just to, remember what a great sounding fucking promo used to sound like.
Yeah.
It didn't get any better to me than Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard cutting promos. That was just incredible. And then to watch them wrestle, even more incredible, So, thank God for, DVDs and Blu-rays and Blu-ray players, because you're not going to get it on live television anymore.
Yeah. That's the thing, like, now they're basically entertainment and all that, but, I just feel like maybe, wrestling is what got Vince McMahon and everybody else in that company where they are. To turn your back on it really just to be freaking soap opera and all this storyline stuff is it's sad.
Right.
If WWE had a choice of just having a show where they just base it around two people talking, they would. Just to not have wrestling. Because that's where they're at right now.
Right. And, it's sometimes you really do just got to dance with what brung you, and we're not there anymore. So,
No.
All right, we're just going to have to keep muddling on. It's a good thing we have an outlet like AngryMarks.com where we can just bitch about stuff, because I spend Monday night watching wrestling, I spend Friday night watching it, and then I can come in here on Tuesday night and just completely bitch about it. It's awesome. I love AngryMarks.com. So thank you, Stevie J, for giving us this outlet. Ciara, any last thoughts before we go tonight?
Okay, remember the other night you were asking, has there ever been anybody that's won the Royal Rumble, the King of the Ring, and the WWE Championship in the same year, WrestleMania to WrestleMania?
Yes.
Okay. Brock Lesnar and Bret Hart. Really.
Right, and then Sheamus this year.
Yeah, but see, the thing is with Sheamus, because since he was the last, King of the Ring winner, which was in 2010.
Oh, that was that for long ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's kind of like
so
he doesn't really get in there.
Yeah.
Which is the tricky thing, because like I was telling you, when I was like going through all this, I had each page on Wikipedia side by side, and then, you go across, because I go like this, I'm like, okay, let me look at the Royal Rumble and King Ring, see the years, and I go to the WWE Championships, and it'd be so tricky, because this guy will have Royal Rumble, King Ring won that year, and I go to WWE Championships, didn't win it. He didn't win it to this year, that year, and it's just so tricky. So Bret Hart and Brock Lesnar are the only two to do it.
Okay, well, and I'm going to tell you something. I appreciate the effort you put into that, because we got to talking about it the other night, and you're like, okay, you know what? No, I got to go look this up. And then you threw yourself headlong into this thing like you were getting a college degree in it. I thought it was pretty incredible.
I told you,
folks. Ciara, the hardest working journalist on AngryMarks.com. Let me tell you what, she really put her back to it, and I appreciate that. So that's your answer. Bret Hart and Brock Lesnar are the only two ever to win King of the Ring, Royal Rumble, and a World Championship in the same year. And by year, we're defining it from WrestleMania to WrestleMania. So thank you, Ciara. That answers that question. By the way, I do want to throw this out there to our listeners in AngryMarks.com land, and certainly in the chat room, which I'm on a device tonight that rhymes with Schmeishmad, so I wasn't able to really go through the Angry Marks chat room as we were talking tonight. Apologize to you guys listening in there. But I do want to throw this out there. I have an email address for AngryMarks.com. It is angrymark@gmail.com. And to our listeners out there, I want to throw you this. If you have any questions or any trivia that you want to throw at us, we will certainly want to try to tackle that. So send us an email to angrymark@gmail.com. Send us trivia questions, and we will do the research and get back to you on the next week's show. And by we, I mean Ciara. So
yeah,
anyway.
Send some women's wrestling stuff. Exactly. I'm a freaking nerd about it, okay?
And by the way, that is my last thought for tonight, okay? And that is you, and again, I didn't watch the pay-per-view, but you did, and you told me that match between Layla and Beth was actually a pretty damn good match from a technical standpoint, and you said it actually got like 7 or 8 minutes of time, right?
Yeah, I actually timed it.
Okay. Here's what I thought about that, though. Did you see the match between Beth and Kelly Kelly last night?
That was
pretty much the exact opposite of what you described to me from Beth and Layla the night before.
It was, I had such high expectations, and then I was just let down. The match over the limit, it was, like I said, 7 to 8 minutes, because I sat there and actually timed it, and I was like, I want to see how long they're going to take. Let this go.
Because you probably figured it was going to be like a 2 or 3 minute match, right?
I said to myself, if they make this 2 or 3 minutes, please just fire Beth Phoenix, because she doesn't need to be humiliated anymore. And they went for about 7, 8 minutes, and they did really good. They started out where Beth Phoenix, she came out there in her Glamazon gear, not that skirt crap, the Glamazon. She went straight at Layla, displaying her power, took control of Layla, went after her injured knee. I mean, at one point, Layla had climbed the turnbuckle, and Beth Phoenix just grabs her by her knee and just slams her on the mat. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, oh my God, like she's, I was sitting there because I kept saying chat room, she is Glamazon now. She's not this pinup strong chick anymore. And she was just laying in the hits on Layla. Layla sold it like Beth Phoenix was sawing her leg off. And then Beth Phoenix sets her up for the military press, and she's about to drop her, and Layla just reverses it into a DDT. And, she tries to get a couple of upsets against Beth, and Beth Phoenix grabs her and sets her up for the Glam Slam. Roll-up reversal, then she out of nowhere hits the layout, and it's 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, that's how you should book your damn Divas matches.
Yeah, make them about the craft.
It told a story, because it was like, I didn't think they were going to do it that long, because I kept saying to myself, if they really want people to actually care about this, they need to make this about 5 to 10 minutes. The match told a story of Beth Phoenix is stronger than Layla. She's going to take her down at any cost. And it really made Layla came off as a legitimate contender babyface, because they want to position her as the top babyface. And the crowd was even sympathetic towards Layla. And I'm like, if you can get the crowd to be sympathetic towards a diva, you're telling a story.
So what you're telling me is that the crowd actually invested in that match.
Yeah, well, when it first started, you had your 4 or 5 sheep in the crowd going, Karma, and I'm like, she's not here, okay? She's not here. And then eventually, I guess they got into the match, and then they just started, reacting to stuff, and it's like, that's what you need to get the crowd to actually care about the division. And then the next night on Raw, Beth Phoenix sets up Kelly Kelly for the Glam Slam, and I don't know if Beth dropped her too fast, where Kelly couldn't catch herself, or if Kelly went down too quick, or didn't. I don't know, but it was a bad bump, and it was horrible. It
looked like Kelly slammed her face on the mat, yeah.
I thought Kelly was dead.
Yeah, and what was even worse than that from a viewer's perspective is they actually let Kelly get some offense in last night, and she is just horrible. Like, why does she even bounce off the ropes? Because she doesn't bounce off the ropes. She just kind of backs up to it and then runs off of the rope. Like, there's no, I don't understand. I understand Kelly weighs like 75 pounds and half that's her breast implants, okay? I get that. But what I don't understand is why they let her wrestle, because she just can't. And she was slow and plodding, and it was like she had to set herself up for every one of her moves that she got in.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm looking at this bony little chick who's wrestling Beth Phoenix, who, I'm sorry, is built like a bodybuilder, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at these two, and I'm like, if these two met in a back alley, Beth Phoenix would turn her into a pretzel and chuck her over the fence easily. And I'm supposed to believe that Kelly could get any kind of offense in a match against this chick? There's no way. That should have been a total squash. Let's move on. Beth Phoenix is in a bad mood because she lost her Divas title shot the night before. Come out there and just absolutely destroy Kelly and go all Goldberg. Who's next? Feed me somebody else,
Yeah, and I like how, like you said with the Kelly thing is, the bad thing is WWE did was they had Kelly beat Beth Phoenix 3 times with a roll-up. I mean, like a little roll-up. And, all these years we've been trained as Beth Phoenix, she's the most dominant diva in WWE history, even over China. They even went as far as to say over China. And so you've been thinking all these years that no one can beat her. And then you have this girl that's like 115 pounds roll up this, this huge glamazon with ease 3 times. And then last night she, I have nothing against Kelly, but it's just like she just kept stalling on moves. And I kept thinking, like, it's not like she's waiting on Beth because Beth is waiting on her. I just didn't understand that. And I hope that they do continue this Beth Phoenix character going the way she's going, of where she's pissed off now. She's not playing around, because that's what we need. And everybody that's still asking where Karma is, look, folks, I don't know where she is. All I know is that creative has nothing for her.
Well, and there's a good indication that we probably might not ever see her again on TV.
The chances are, like I said a few weeks ago, I don't know if something's going on with her personally, but, this past weekend I listened to the Bella Twins, Brianna and Nicole Garcia's interview with Diva Dirt. And, say what you want to say about the Bella Twins, but Nikki Bella, what she was saying about, because they were asking about Karma, and she was like, well, I was thinking Karma was coming out there. She had fought, when she was out there with her title, she was ready for Karma to come out there. She was ready for the music. She was ready for the implant buster. She was thinking Karma was coming out there to destroy them.
Right.
And it didn't happen. And they were both saying, it's disappointing because it does not make the story come full circle.
Sure.
And that's like, it made me like, wow, these are 2 girls that were, because Nikki was saying, I even waited in the ring a few extra minutes thinking she was going to come out there, and then here comes Layla.
Yeah.
So that tells you right there, they don't know what the hell to do with this girl.
No, and here's the thing. It's sad when, we just spent an hour bitching about how the men's wrestling division, if you want to call it that, has lost its focus on the craft. It's more about whiny emo, who's banging whose storylines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we start talking about Divas wrestling, and we're like, wait a minute, there's a story being told over here. It's pretty sad that the 3 or 4 women's wrestlers are doing a better job of telling a story than the 60 dudes. So that's the state of wrestling today, folks. If you want to get good wrestling, and if you want to see the craft, the match with Kelly last night notwithstanding, from what you told me about the Layla and Beth Phoenix match the other night, there's some craft there, and we're not getting it on the men's side. It's just amazing to me. But, I mean, thank God for Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, because to me, nothing else on that pay-per-view the other night was really worth watching except for the Divas match, okay? But if it hadn't been for those 2 guys, nothing else on that show would have really mattered. There were no title switches except for, and I take that back. There was one title switch on Sunday night, and Christian is now the Intercontinental Champion. I'm not sure what to think about that, but you know what? Let's tackle that one next week because I want to spend some time on it.
Yeah, and he's a face now.
Yeah, I know, right? And for me, Christian never works as a face, but that's just me. But yeah, we can. Let's definitely hit that one up next week. But in the meantime, I think that's going to just about do it. I'm pretty sure Kev's back behind the scenes going, all right, guys, let's go. So anyway, Ciara, again, thanks for everything. Thanks for your outstanding work and your analysis. And folks, again, AngryMark@gmail.com. Send us your trivia questions. Send us your comments about the show. Bitch at us if you'd like to. Just let us hear from you. That's the email address. And that is going to do it for tonight's show. Ciara, thank you, and I hope you have a much better week this week.
Yeah, I hope so too. And another thing, I guess nobody knows this. Where WWE says Trish Stratus is the only one to have 7 women's championship runs, actually, she didn't beat Moolah. Moolah has 8.
Ooh. All right.
WWE doesn't count 2 of them.
Because they're dumbasses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moolah has 8.
So, folks, let me tell you something. If you're going to send trivia to AngryMark@gmail.com, if you're going to send a trivia question to that email address, you better bring it strong because Ciara's on her game.